TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Welcome to another edition of the RF Video Shoot interview series. Today we're joined by a true legend in the sport of professional wrestling, George Steele. Thanks for being here today.
Talk slow. Easy.
Sorry about that. My very first question for you would be is how you got started in the wrestling business.
Not that slow.
Slower? Slower? Slow. How did you get started in the wrestling business?
Do you want to talk to George or Jim Myers? Let's just get it straight.
Jim Myers.
Oh, I thought so. Then we can talk.
All right, great.
If you want to talk to George, hey!
Slower.
You! Slow down. Jim can talk.
Okay, we'll talk to Jim.
Okay, I think you'll like that better.
I guess, Jim, how you got started in the wrestling business? Were you a fan of the business growing up?
You know what? This is going to blow your mind. It's probably not going to be a very good interview because I'm going to be very straight with you. I was not a wrestling fan. I never watched wrestling. I could care less about wrestling. I was into football. I was just graduated from Michigan State University, had blown a knee, and started teaching for $4,300 a year in 1961.
Right.
Not a lot of money, especially I have two children with a third one coming and a wife. So the first year I struggled through that. I played some semi-pro football for $100 a ball game, which was huge in that time. I mean, I ended up playing 12 games, so it's $1,200. And the guys playing in the NFL at that time was making about $4. So you know what I'm talking about?
Right.
Money wasn't the same as it is now. So that first year I struggled around. Then I went out looking for a job as a bouncer in a bar with a friend of mine. My friend was crazy, stupid. He was a huge wrestling fan. And so I found out three things that night. Number one, you don't take a friend if you're looking for a job as a bouncer in a bar. Number two, you don't drink a lot of beer if you're looking for a job as a bouncer in a bar. And number three, if you're sitting with a guy that's a jerk that loves professional wrestling, you're liable to end up calling a promoter at 2:30 in the morning and say, I want to be a wrestler. And that's how it started.
Wow.
Woke up Bert Ruby, the local promoter in Detroit. He invited me over the next day, had no idea what was going on. So I knock on his door. He comes to the door and he says, oh, beautiful. I know what I look like. So I figure, uh-oh, switch hitter.
Right.
And he invites me in. I meet his mother-in-law, his couple of, his wife and two children. And one of his children, by the way, a little side story,
right,
is Alan Ruby. Have you heard that name?
I don't know who he is.
Alan Ruby is the head lawyer for Barry Bonds right now. Whoa, heavy-duty people.
Right.
Anyhow, Bert Ruby, the promoter, invites me in, and I go in, and I feel better when I meet his family. Then he takes me into his office, and we start talking about and I don't know anything about the wrestling. I could care less.
Right.
He starts asking me questions, and then he says, take your shirt off. Huh. Oh, switch hitter again. And then I take my shirt off. He goes, oh, beautiful. And he starts pulling on the hair of my body. Still no clue what's going on. But he liked the thickness and the hair in the body, and he's thinking wrestling, and I'm thinking what's going on. Anyhow, we talked a little bit. He never smarted me up to the business. He sent me was in Detroit area. He sent me to Windsor to work out with 4 or 5 wrestlers. This is old school. This is real old school.
Right.
So I go over there. It's in the basement of a Catholic church. They got a ring set up. They got all the workout stuff, and they go out and they work my tail off for about 30 minutes. I mean, heavy duty stuff, really heavy duty. Then they say, okay, let's get in the ring. And the deal is, in those days, they'd take you in the ring and beat you up. Well, I have been from the streets of Detroit. I had a learning disability, so my big success was fighting. So these guys are going to beat me up. Okay, let's go. So bing, 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 bing. About 45 minutes later, they said, listen, don't tell Bert, but we want to show you some stuff about the business. And they started showing me how to work a little bit. And right away, I lost respect for it. Because to me, they were challenging my integrity as an athlete. They were doing this, they were doing, and I almost turned around and walked out, to be honest with you. But I stick around, and after about 6 months, I went to this basement about 8 times, and I was in the ring.
Wow.
But about 8 months into the ring, I started learning a lot about the business of working a match, and I developed a real respect for the talent of working a match, which is a lost art today. But back then it was an art, and how to control a crowd and all this stuff, and it really became a challenge for me, and one that I think that I mastered after a while, but I learned it from masters, and I didn't learn it at a stupid school with somebody that wrestled 5 or 6 minutes. I learned it in the back seat of a car. No, not with a woman.
Right.
In the back seat, coming back after shows with a 6-pack of beer and a log-nog sandwich, or bologna blowout, and we'd have, as soon as they come out, as soon as they get in the car before we stop for the beer and the sandwich, they would start critiquing my match. And these are old timers that knew what they were doing. And they would critique, clip here, and make you feel like you were bare naked sometimes because they were really tough in what they were telling you, but they were right. And that's where I learned the business. Unfortunately, the kids today don't have that opportunity.
We can talk about that coming up. As far as what is the hardest aspect of learning the business? Was it the bumping or the psychology or
bumping? Who takes bumps? I found out early on it's better to give bumps than to take them.
Right.
I mean, come on. No, early on I took a lot of bumps. It was part of, you had to. And I was pretty good at some of that. I was never getting on the top rope and doing all that silly stuff.
Right.
But I could take a bump in relationship to the story to make sense, and I knew how to sell it. But the hard part of it was getting along with the people. And I'm not talking about the fans. I'm talking about the boys. When you're a young guy in the old school, you come in, you sit down, and you keep your mouth shut. And they come over, and when they wanted to talk to you, they talk to you. You didn't. I mean, it was if you didn't have respect for them, then you were out of there. And it was a business respect more than a physical respect.
What do you remember about your very first match?
It was Klondike Bill, and Bert Ruby come in, and he said, "I want you to go 10, 15 minutes and a halfway shoot match." Because I've only been to the gym 4 or 5 times. I didn't know how to work.
Right.
So I said, "I want you to shoot." And I didn't really know what that meant. But so we went out. We really kind of beat each other up in Kalamazoo, Michigan. After about 12 minutes, I was breathing. But Klondike Bill, the old pro, he was dying. He said, "Let's finish this damn thing." So we boom and bing, covered, and that was my first match.
Now, did the veterans, when you first broke in, kayfabe you a lot, or did they pretty much smarten you up?
They kayfabe me in this way. The first trip I made to Kalamazoo, Michigan, for the first match, I was in a car with 4 wrestlers. And one of them's an Indian. "What tribe are you from?" He said, "Me from Puerto Rican tribe." I mean, so,
Right.
they were working with kind of shooting with me. And when I went for that first match, we went to the old hotel in Detroit, which was the wrestling office on about the 5th floor. And I walked in, and there was 3 guys playing poker. Now, this was one of the promoters and 2 businessmen from the area. Big, serious poker.
Right.
There was guys sitting all around the room. A lot of them I hadn't met before. They were all wrestlers. No one said, hi, go to hell or whatever. They just sit there. And I walked in kind of uncomfortable. Finally, Gino Brito, the guy that was really breaking me up and breaking me into the business, walked over and said, "Oh, Jim," he's whispering, and "we'll be going in the cars here in a couple of minutes." And so I didn't really, what do I know?
How difficult was it back then? I mean, obviously to call a match, but the locker rooms, there was, back in the old days, there was heel locker room and face locker room, and nowadays, it's pretty much everyone's together. Was that difficult at all for you guys? Or?
Well, no, we were in the same locker room back
Okay.
then. They put a manager with me. God, I can't think of his name, and it's very important that I do. But he was only with me about maybe 3 months. And and this is one of my real experiences from wrestling. He come back to the ring after a match. Louis Papineau,
Right.
37 years old, come back after a match going, and fell dead.
Wow.
I mean, he died. And Johnny Gates is one of the old-time wrestlers who got beat all the time. Said, "Drag him back to the ring. Maybe I could cover him and get a pin. Get him out there when he's still warm." So it's like, whoa, this is a pretty cool business.
Yeah.
And that's the guy was dead, and this guy is talking about take him back out and let me get a pin. I'm going, whoa.
Time to get help.
That's the way it was.
Now, your first gimmick, was it a student gimmick, I believe?
Well, we better be careful with gimmicks.
Right. Well,
Okay?
your first
A
character.
gimmick is when I take someone out of my pants and hit them in the throat and knock their friggin' head off.
Right.
My character, if you want to talk about my character, totally different ball game. I never looked at it as a gimmick. I started wrestling as a student. When I talked to Bert Ruby the first time, I told him, that I was a school teacher and coach and so on.
Right.
And we didn't want to mix the two. And I'm sure the school didn't want to mix it. And so we put a mask on me. I went to the ring in a red cap and gown, and I wrestled as a student, which really fit because I was learning the business. The student, it kind of made sense. When Louis Papineau died, they brought in a great wrestling protege of mine, Gary Hart.
I was going to ask you about Gary.
One of the greatest managers in the business, as far as I'm concerned. He was much more than just a gimmick manager now. I'm sorry I use that word. But he just didn't go to the ring with most of the guys after our experience. With me, he was brought in to manage me. There was no business locks to us at all. After that, he knew enough to always have a lock and to always have leverage with whoever he's working with. And we learned that together from Bert Ruby, every promoter I ever worked with, which was not a lot. I didn't go all over the world because I was able to get over in New York, but I didn't want to go anywhere else.
Right, exactly.
Come on, give me a break. But anyhow, I learned how to maintain leverage, get leverage on the promoter. It's a game that you play. The big work is not always in the ring. Sometimes it's in the dressing room with the boys, intimidating. You know, you don't want to be challenged every time you're out there. So they got to respect your toughness. And then the promoter, he's the one that's going to pay you. So you got to play games with him and make him want you more than you want him, which I was able to do because I remained teaching. So it was a leverage that I always had.
Right.
I could turn around and go back to teach. I taught for 25 years.
Wow. I remember when you were with WWF, you would pretty much work in the summer and then
go back to school. It was a part-time wrestling,
right.
part-time job for me. That's all it ever was.
As far as doing the student character, how hard was that for you to play that character? And how far did that go? How long did you stay with that?
Well, I started with it. My first match, when I went to Kalamazoo, Michigan, I had the mask on. 6 weeks later, I was wrestling in the main events. It was just bam, right to the top. They needed somebody at the time. I had a mask on, and I had this outfit. After I took the cap and gown off, all the hair showed, and I had the top, and it was all red. And it was really a pretty charismatic thing. And then the look, and I knew nothing.
Right.
Gary used to yell at me, 2, and that meant something. It was like playing football. We had signals, and they were real signals. And then he ended up one night, we decided that we were going to have a whistle. He'd blow the whistle 2 times, 3 times. We were way ahead of our time, so then we were selling the whistles to the crowd.
Oh.
So they were going all, toot, toot, toot. And act like they're screwing me up, and we sold a lot of whistles.
TitleMatchNetwork.com